Hamakani everyone. Homoya bemi. Nishanana memi wakamni. Lidam lily yapemni. Ustama hedidi. Hi, I'm Shelly Covert. I'm the spokesperson for the Nevada City Rancheria Tribe. I'm also the executive director of our nonprofit CHIRP, which is the California Heritage Indigenous Research Project. You know, I'm asked to speak sometimes for sustainable food systems and permaculture and clean energy, things like, you know, speaking about the native perspective on dams and healthy forests, watersheds, that kind of thing. And what I keep finding is that even with fire, like a lot of people want to talk about the healthy way to get fire back on the land. And that's great. I know I went to one conference and spoke on the wolves that were just coming back into population in California, and they were talking about removing protections from them again. And I know it's important to bring a native perspective into these conversations. But sometimes I feel like, you know, there's this ocean or this entire universe of the way that the tribes were on the land and the engagement with the land. I can only speak personally from the Nisenan here, where we are in Northern California, but I do see a lot of similarities, and I've heard other tribal people speak about a very similar relationship that they have with the landscapes. And I keep finding that there's a tiny bit of a red flag for me, a little tiny bit of a, you know, a warning or something that comes with these topics. And I think it's because, like, out of this huge ocean or this universe of information and knowledge and connectedness with the planet, because of catastrophic fire, because of the lack of water, or because the species are almost extinct, like, we zoom into this one topic, or we zoom into this one geographic area, and of course we put our focus on it. And, you know, in the environmental movements and just the whole overall topic of sustainability, whatever it is, I know that's important. And yet at the same time, what I keep finding in my heart is that I wish I could convey everything that I feel and know and learn from my grandma and grandpa and my ancestors. I wish I could convey that memory of what civilization was like here before all of this, before the change. And I know that, you know, the pendulum always swings. It swings super far to one way or the other, and people get motivated and activated, and so that it swings back. And usually, you know, you can look back in history and it usually swings way back to the other side, you know, and I'm always looking for that in the middle where everybody's pretty happy. And what I keep finding is I'm so glad that we're talking about permaculture. I'm so glad that we're speaking about sustainability and, like, looking at the folks who are in the inner cities who totally rely on food distribution systems to bring food into them. And, like, oh no, what happens if the lights go out? Like, what do people do? How do we feed ourselves? So in all of that, and especially speaking about fire and the catastrophic fires that have been happening around the country, really, especially in California, is that we're trying to apply a fix. Yes, putting fire back in the forest is super important, but we're missing the larger piece that lives in memory of the tribe. And the larger piece is that the landscape itself, a geography, is continuous. It goes, that's what watersheds are, right? The water comes and it sheds down into the rest of the land to nourish it. Even in rocks that don't even have soil, like all of these things, rocks, water, air, soil, people, animals, all of this, if you believe that they are living beings at all, if you could even pretend for a minute that each of these things are living beings and that they all live in this natural symbiosis with one another and need each other and rely on each other to make this ecosystem what it's supposed to be, you can sort of get the feeling that I'm trying to convey to people, that when we zoom in and we're talking about, oh, let's get fire back in the forests, because of catastrophic fire, we're missing the rest of the conversation. And I understand that we live in a modern America in the way that we do today. I know that we have cars and roads and electricity, and we don't rely on one another like our tribe did. I understand that. And at the same time, folks like yourselves who care about permaculture and sustainability, I just long to get this memory or this idea in your heads as you move forward and work with activism or changing policy, or just being the ones who are being cognizant of these issues. You know, it's not everybody. So the folks who are interested, I'm so happy to share. And I wish, I fall down on words because it's hard for me to convey this. It's more of a feeling and a memory than me being able to, like, you know, write a list of things of what's important. I think if we can just even pretend or break out of the mindset that private property, this square, this watershed, this river, this tree, that animal, those people, and if you can zoom out and look at the landscape as a whole, if we try to get back there in all of the work that we do, if we can try to get back to that memory and that way of understanding that everything needs everybody else, and that true sustainability can only happen in a collective landscape with everything involved, everything tips the scale, you know. I just imagine this big tree of scales, and when you get the right balance, whoop, you know, it's all good. And I'm glad the fire is coming back on the land. I'm glad we're doing sustainable food. I'm glad that all these things are finally coming into sort of a more mainstream conversation. But what I'm not seeing is to go further. Is it to go further or is it to go back? You know, it's that pendulum thing again. How do we get to the point where anything is truly sustainable when the people are not in the forests, the great animal herds are no longer in the forests, and the water is not free to be itself and to do the things it's supposed to do to nourish the entire watershed? So in all that, I hope I'm not talking in too many circles, but I think you guys are the right ones to talk about this with. And I know it may not be today, and it may not be next year, it may not be even this decade that we can even start to bring up this conversation in mainstream conversation, because people say that's impossible. Like, that's Forest Service land, that's impossible, that's my neighbor's land, and they don't, you know, they spray Roundup. Or that's impossible, my neighbors over there shoot all the coyotes when they come around. Or I know there's all these mindsets that we have to take into the conversation. But if I can seed that in any way with some memory of the past, of what it was like when it's the body of the earth, it's the landscape, it's every little ecosystem needs something else to survive and be what it is supposed to be. So that's what I'd like to leave you guys with. I'd like to leave you with just pretend everything has a soul and a conscious mind, that everything is part of the larger whole. And to be truly sustainable, I think we need to start knocking on that door of these big cohesive landscapes that are all inclusive and all protected. Keep pushing the walls of sustainability. Maybe my farm today, or my yard, or maybe even our neighborhood, maybe our city, maybe our entire county that encompasses, you know, the high mountains down to the valley and the wetlands down there and everything in between. And it's all being seen as one being. So just think on that. Thank you for listening. Ekwa.